Wheels and tires, pretty much the only maintenance that you have to think about as a Tesla owner. You just gotta rotate and purchase replacements. And well, I figured because this is a Tesla focused channel and I have so many new owner friendly videos, I might as well have a video on this too. Plus I get questions on my setup quite frequently. The tires I have are Michelin Crossclimate 2s, a very popular choice for Teslas. And now that I've put over 10,000 miles on them, I feel pretty comfortable discussing why they are the perfect tire for me and maybe for you too. Everything shown and mentioned will be linked below, and let's get into it. So first, let's rotate and or swap. My process is pretty much the same for both, and while I know that most people know how to do this, if you don't, or this is your first EV and you've heard that getting the car off the ground is a little bit different compared to ICE, well, here you go. For tools, it's pretty simple. You're gonna need a low profile jack. Most people get a 3-ton, including myself. Jack pads, these are something that's different compared to ICE and are essential unless you wanna run the risk of damaging your battery. There are 4 jack points around the car that you insert these jack pad adapters into, and then you can jack it up from there. A standard breaker bar, a torque wrench, and a 21mm socket. Also, an impact wrench makes it easier. I have one, but it's not absolutely necessary. Also some wheel stoppers, and I'm not sure if that's the actual name for them. I've always just used wooden blocks, but now that I do pretty much all my work in a garage on a flat surface, I don't really use anything anymore. If I'm swapping wheels, I'll put the ones on the ground somewhat close to the tires, so if something were to happen, they'd catch, or at least I hope they would. You should probably get some. Do as I say, not as I do. Now, everyone's process is going to be a little different because of X, Y, and Z, and that's why their process is the best. But this is the way that I do mine and have been for the past few years ever since getting my Tesla. I start by placing my jack pad adapter onto the side I'm going to be working on. Like I said, there's 4, 1 for each wheel. After that, I'll remove the arrow / center wheel cap. If you have the arrows, it's pretty easy. You just grab and pull. If you don't, and you have, for example, the 20-inch Uber turbines, you actually need, I use a very small and thin Allen wrench that I can like get into the hole and then pull out. From there, I'll just line up my jack with the jack pad adapter and do a few pumps, just enough to get some of the weight of the car on the jack and off the wheel. Then I'll grab my breaker bar and break the lugs. You don't want to try breaking lugs when the wheel is fully off the ground. It's just going to spin. Then I lift up the rest of the way until the wheel is fully off the ground. Now, if you're swapping wheels, it's really easy. Once you got the wheel off the ground, remove the lugs, remove the wheel, get the other wheel, line up and place, followed by hand tightening the lugs at first so you don't cross thread, and then using an impact wrench to tighten them down even more, or you could just do it by hand. Lower the car just enough for the wheel to touch the ground and grab the torque wrench, set it to 129 pound-feet and torquing in a star pattern for even distribution. Very quick and very easy. However, if you're rotating, it's a little bit different. Some people will recommend that you get a jack stand if you're rotating. I personally don't use one, but you probably should. So backing up when we were lifting the car off the ground after breaking the lugs, keep on lifting until there is enough room to place a jack stand. And like you're gonna need to lift it until essentially that entire side of the car is off the ground. But make sure that you've broken the lugs on both wheels at this point, because, well, both wheels are going to be off the ground. Then you just insert your jack pad adapter and line up your jack stand. From there, lower the car ever so slightly until the jack stand makes contact with the jack pad. Now, if you're looking at doing cross rotations, because I'm showing a front to back, that's a little bit different. I've always used multiple jacks for that. However, I guess you could use just one jack and some jack stands, but I'm not going to get into it because if you can do front to back, then you can do that as well. It's pretty simple. And another thing is to be aware if your tires are directional, meaning they can only rotate one way, and or if you're potentially on a staggered setup. You're probably aware of the latter though, as no Model 3s or Ys come with a staggered setup. However, once the car is on that jack stand, from there get to swapping and just refer back to what I said when swapping the wheels. Of course, with the addition of removing the jack stand. Now, the only other Tesla specific thing that you need to do is going into your car's car's settings and telling it that you've swapped the tires or done a rotation. That way it'll keep track for you. And if you're wondering how you connect your car to your TPMS sensors or how you tell it that you've changed them around, the car does it automatically after a few minutes of driving. This is all very simple and straightforward and takes me not more than like 45 minutes to do at the most. Tesla used to charge $50 for this, which was honestly not bad, as they'd come to your house or your place of work and just do it for you. However, last I heard, depending on your area, they either don't do it anymore or they charge much more, like several hundred. And I know some people will say that, oh, I go to this place or that place and they do it for free. However, I'm personally not trusting any non-Tesla certified shop to touch my car, because what if they don't use jack pads or they don't torque to spec your lugs? Doing it myself, I know it's done correctly. Oh, and then the very, very last thing I do is that after about 50 miles, I'll re-torque all the lugs again just to be sure. All right, so my wheels and tires. I have a set of 18-inch T-Sportline TS5 satin grays wrapped in Michelin Crossclimate 2s. When it comes to wheels, if you're looking at getting either a dedicated winter set or you just don't like the stock wheels and you want to get something else, you really have three options: T-Sportline, Martian wheels, or Unplugged Performance. Yes, you can get wheels from elsewhere, but these are like the main places to go to. Plus, they specialize in Tesla. Also, each of them kind of have their own reason for going with them. Do you want plug and play? T-Sportline has wheel and tire packages that come with TPMS sensors already installed, mounted, balanced, you just throw them on. Want super lightweight forged wheels that have teeth to hold the tire in place during hard acceleration? Martian wheels. Want very performance-oriented track-focused wheels? Unplugged Performance. I can only personally speak for T-Sportline, which I've been very satisfied with and recommend to other people, but I've heard great things about the other two places as well. Now, something to keep in mind when it comes to switching to a third-party or aftermarket wheel is range loss. Now, of course, most people know that if you size up, you're going to see some range loss. However, sizing down may not lead to range gain. I, for instance, sized down from my 20-inch Ubers to my 18 inches during the winter and spring and fall, and I don't gain any range. I get roughly the same range despite them being lighter and smaller. They're just less aerodynamic. And before someone says, well, what if you drove them during the summer? I have driven them during the summer, during late spring when it's nice and warm out, and still the same thing. It's within 5 miles within margin of error from my 20 inches. And then the other thing to keep in mind is if you are a performance owner, the bigger performance brakes can interfere with a lot of wheels. However, I believe every wheel from the 3 sites I mentioned are compatible with the performance brakes. And I am referring to the last gen performance. So if you're watching this video and the new like refresh performance is out, I don't know. Make sure you double check. My TS5s fit over my 2022 Model 3 performance brakes just fine. Now, the Crossclimate 2s. If you want a TLDR, they are fantastic and the perfect tire for my use case. I will probably not buy a different all-season / weather tire for the foreseeable future. I have a gas car in my house, and when that is due for new tires, I plan on putting Crossclimate 2s on it. Now, without getting too into the weeds, as I am not a channel like tire reviews, Crossclimate 2s are essentially a performance all-season tire that is snow rated. You could also refer to them as an all-weather tire, which is a term that was recently coined to describe an all-season tire that is actually good above and below 40 degrees. And if you're wondering why I'm saying that it's actually good, is because, well, all seasons are kind of just bad at everything. They're not as good as a dedicated summer tire or a dedicated winter tire. And don't get this confused with me trying to convince you to sell your summer and winter set and switch to these, or not get 2 different sets, one for the summer and one for the winter, as I'm still a big advocate for having 2 sets of tires. I still have a summer set that I use during the summer. However, if you're like me and live in a location that experiences winter, but Mother Nature can have pretty drastic mood swings, you might want to give these tires a look as your winter set, or if you are insistent on only owning 1 set of tires year round. For example, here in Kentucky, we recently had some decent snowfall followed by temps in the negatives, which would have been perfect for a set of dedicated winter tires. But not even a week later, it was sunny in the high 60s, pushing 70. Winter wheel compound starts degrading rapidly above 40 degrees, so that would not have been perfect for winter tires. But enter the Crossclimate 2s. They are 3 peak mountain snow rated and won't burn up when you road trip the car to Florida in the summer, which yes, I did do and have a video here on the channel. I feel very confident on these tires in both the snow and wet. If you live in an area like mine where a lot of people run all seasons, you can tell who's on all seasons. They can't get up above 20 or 30 miles per hour without their car starting to sway. Then there's me in my little electric car on my Crossclimate 2s doing 55 passing trucks and Jeeps. Braking, handling, turning, all great. And the reason that I mentioned wet is because you will see some reviews online that put the wet performance in the lowest performing category. But if you actually stop and look at the reviews, if everything's a 9 to a 10, one category being a 8 to a 9 doesn't make it bad. In fact, I did a road trip back in 2020 where I had about 3 hours to get home before everything iced over. It was that big cold snap where all those Electrify America chargers stopped working. There was just an absolute downpour and I had to book it the whole way home as I did not want to be caught out in that. And I mean, I booked it. But the tires did fantastic and have done fantastic anytime I've driven when it's wet outside. Like I said, hard braking, turning, acceleration, they've never failed me. And while I might not be the best person to ask as I'm used to driving on 20-inch big tires that, you feel more of the road and they are just noisier, the ride comfort and noise from these Crossclimate 2s are pretty good. They're about the same noisiness as my 20-inch Uber turbines that have the foam in them, but the ride comfort is definitely better. Now, compared to the 18-inch Arrows I had on my old long range, these are noisier, but they feel about the same. And if you're just switching your stock wheels, like let's say you own a set of 19 sport wheels or 18 Aero wheels over to these tires, despite what you might read online, range loss, like I mentioned, has not been my experience. Now, I'm gonna have some videos linked below showing the Crossclimate 2 versus the best of the best winter tires and the best of the best summer tires, just so you can see how it actually compares. And also just so you can see people going more in depth on these tires than I ever could. I also want to mention the warranty, as I know that is a pretty big deal for a lot of people. It's 60,000 miles, which I honestly thought I was misreading when I first read it, as most tires that I'm used to buying are like 30 to 45. Now, I am aware that other brands of tires have begun producing all-weather-like tires, Nokian being a big one, and they are heavily pushed here in the Tesla community by a few channels that have sponsors with them, but I don't own them, so I can't speak on them. I'm not sponsored by Michelin or any tire for that matter. I'm just telling you all my own honest experience. But yeah, I'm just not the type of person to knock something if I haven't tried it, or just because I own a different brand. Now, if you have any more specific questions for me, you can drop a comment down below or reach out to me over on Twitter. And for the people that don't have OEM Tesla tires, what do you have? What's your use case and how do you like them? I never thought tires would be a topic that I would consider fun, but here I am. If you want to see more Tesla related stuff in your YouTube feed, then feel free to subscribe. I'd appreciate it. This video was a little difficult to make as I had zero idea how to structure it. So if you did enjoy it or found it helpful, drop a like below so I know, and I may experiment with doing other types of videos like this. And yeah, I will see you all in the next one. Peace.